I agree that it's a very good thing, and I would actually urge women who have not yet had an HPV test to go and get their test done. I absolutely agree with that. One of my colleagues was raising this issue as far back as 2021, that there was a gap with the cervicals testing as far back as 2021, in June 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And here we are, 4 years later, and we are still calling out because there's a gap in cervical testing. And now, what happens in the interim, in those 4 years? And why has it taken this long for this to be addressed? And we have heard that obviously there's been 15 ladies, unfortunately, who have been diagnosed with cervical cancer since 2021, and that seemed to be a number that was high enough to trigger this review. And I'm glad that they're doing reviews, because it's something that, of course, during the election we very passionately spoke about reviewing matters. But I query, is it too little too late? Because we're talking about a number of 12,000. And the next question is the system going to be overloaded, or is it going to be able to cope with that influx? One of the issues we've been raising for a long time is record keeping, or the lack thereof, and the issues that raises. And here is an example of perhaps a shortfall in record keeping, where the GHA haven't been able to keep up with who's had a smear test, who's not had a smear test, or the new ones, the HPV variety, who lives in Gibraltar, who's moved away. And that, to my mind, could be could have a severe impact on other screening programs and on other areas and campaigns which the GHA is seeking to roll out. So it is a positive move, but I think a lot more needs to be done for this to be effective across the board, not just with this screening program.
Well, the government says it's going to be texting those 12,000 women over the next 6 to 10 months in 3 priority groups. Are you satisfied that that's going to solve the problem?
So again, we see an example of perhaps the impact of the failure of the system, and we see it in the fact that the GHA is going to be screening in different priority groups. So, for example, priority 1 are going to receive their text messages hopefully imminently, but they will be the first to receive the text messages. And those are women who were screened last year and had a positive HPV test, and therefore need to be called back for retesting. And what happened in the interim? That's the question to be asked. Why is it that these women are yet to be retested? And so that's a failure. And is it another failure in transitioning of a system? Because again, we've had that failure recently within the care system. So is this another case of we're transitioning? We've held this review, and even within that time when that review was being undertaken and this new system rolled out, there seems to have been failures in that, for example, this priority 1 group of women wouldn't have been picked up until now. And that is, I think, a serious impact potentially moving forward. And I really hope, and I sincerely hope, that delays haven't caused any significant issues in the results that are going to be returned.
But where do you identify the fault? You say you've been raising concerns in the programme, in the system. Where do you identify that the faults are?
So people were attempting to call and to make these appointments, and they weren't getting through for one reason or another. They were unable to get the appointments. My understanding is that the issue at the time was raised that there weren't enough nurse practitioners to undertake these smear tests. And it's certainly an issue that we keep bringing up, that there aren't enough nurses. And now we see that the government have enhanced the cohort of nurse practitioners who are going to be undertaking these tests. So it seems that there was cause for concern, and perhaps we were on the right track there, and therefore that is the issue that we seek to raise, the fact that perhaps the resources weren't in place for these women to have had their testing when they should have been having the testing.
What about the messaging to the public in terms of awareness of this disease and how preventable it is? Do you think that's another area that needs to be looked at?
Absolutely. I mean, I was looking at the figures, and it seems that, for example, an HPV vaccine is actually rolled out. It's been rolled out in schools, and so it's available to both male and female pupils in schools. And apparently the uptake has been lower than since COVID, perhaps, than in other years, than in years prior to that. And that is a concern, because it's got very high it's very efficient. It's about 99% effective, if I'm not mistaken, in preventing this from developing. So again, I think people have to be urged to take this up, and I believe it's before the age of 25 that you should be taking this vaccine. So again, I would urge the public to take that vaccine because it is really important, and perhaps more could have been done in the interim between 2021 and 2025 to encourage the public and to educate on the virtues of taking this vaccine.